Welcome to the news, by the way. This is the sound of the monster that you have inside of yourself as you're developing a little bit of a process in a scenario where you're running through your mindset in your mind, and you're encountering sleep and a dream, and you're encountering a dream and sleep while you're dreaming to depict yourself being chased by a bit of a monster. And it's a bit of a strange encounter because you don't know quite how to feel, but you feel like you're the first person and the person of the perspective of the person that is being chased. And at the same time, it is something that is interesting to be able to encounter, because ultimately upon awakening, ultimately upon being able to understand, getting to be awake again, that you are ultimately both the monster and the person being chased. Yeah, it's quite an interesting concept and an analogy for the concept that relates to being able to connect to monetary energy in the world and the universe and life, and the depiction of your existence and life and the surroundings that also surround you in life, in a system, and life as a system, and the concept that ultimately money is a system that surrounds you, and it's also a predictable pattern, corresponding process that flows in a pattern that is in essence something that you can be able to acknowledge, like a river in essence, and be able to acknowledge the predictability of its flow based upon reading market information and market data and market directions and trend information, for example, to be able to get a sense of the currents and the flows and the density and the volumes of this current and the direction which it's spreading in, and the way that you are able to develop a system just like that monster. You develop the monster in the dream. You are the ecosystem. You are both the monster and yourself in the dream, and it is an interesting correspondence to the interest and the nature of money in of itself, and the interest of monetary energy in correspondence to yourself as energy in essence, because the monster in this dream called life is also monetary energy and money in essence, and to be able to try to get it to flow in your favor, it's a necessity to realize that money is also part of you. Money energy is also part of you, and to be able to develop a process and a system where you're able to pipeline and make different directions for the money to be able to flow around you, you have to also realize that money is also a part of you, and you are a part of money, because money is part of the world, and you are part of the world, and your perspective is similar, just like a dream encounter, just like a dream scenario, that you are part of the monster, and a monster is part of you in the process where in a dream you are being chased by a monster. Yeah. In essence, you just think you are you in that dream, and you are not the rest of the dream, and you are not all of the pieces that are on the sidewalk that you're running on when you're running away from the monster, and you are not a part of the fence that is near what you just ran around to be able to also run away from the monster so that he wasn't able to see you. But ultimately, the fence is also part of you, because that's part of the ecosystem from within you, and part of your perception, part of your understanding, and part of your process to be able to conceptualize the world that is around you in the dream world, which is changing in a rapid and a dynamic fashion that is unpredictable and very peculiar and very unaligned to the way that certain reality is when you're in your conscious reality and when you're in your awake state of reality in essence. So in essence, by being able to paint the picture in yourself and also be also the monster, just as much the monster as it is yourself in the dream of yourself, you can't exactly switch the roles when you're in the corresponding scenario of that monster dream in essence, once you've chosen the role of the person being chased by the monster. And so once you've chosen that role in your subconscious in essence, you can't just necessarily, unless you realize it within the dream, be able to switch into the perspective of the monster, unless that's the direction that your dream goes, and that's the direction that you choose for the dream to go necessarily. And so in this same fashion, by trying to be able to at least parallel that concept more or less, by developing that concept of a framework of money and monetary energy being part of your framework, part of your mentality, part of the idea that money is part of you and you are part of money in essence, and you can transact and interact in a certain fashion that ultimately is transactional, and interacting in a fashion that ultimately is an environment that's transactional, and you both have to exist for each other, of you both to exist in essence, because this world in essence is comprised of a certain finite number of energies in essence, and ultimately you, by existing, are pushing on the universe at the same pressure that money energy is pushing back at you. So you both have to exist to be a necessary existence for existence to be able to exist. And with this in mind, it's just like acknowledging the monster, that the monster is money energy in this instance, where we're talking about reality shifting with the concept of this dream world being able to transact with this mindset, so that in essence, ultimately you can become money. You can become money just like money can become you, more or less, because this world is about you, and your perspective is the world, and your perception is the world that is around you, more or less. So if you are money and you become money, then you're able to navigate money, and you're able to employ money, and you're able to merge with monetary energy, in essence, because you can become the monster. You can become the monster that is monetary energy, meaning as opposed to money just flowing around you and it being flowing in the direction that you want it to flow necessarily, and or not necessarily, or like in other words, you're a circumstance of the money that's flowing around you. You can sort of change the perspective, similar, and you can shift into the perspective of the monster, which is in essence, in this instance, it is the money. You can shift in the perspective of the money, and you can employ the money, meaning you can have the money flowing out from your hands, similar to if you were the monster and the monster was made of money. So if the money's flowing out of your hands, in essence, that you're able to depict the directions which it flows into, in essence, and you have to give money the incentive and the value that it needs to be able to grow, and the pipeline and the directions that it needs to flow, and the rivers that it needs to flow into. You need to guide it into those rivers to be able to continue to grow, so that process turns into an asset fashion and an asset process. So in essence, similar to like that dream, more or less, if you chose like to be the person that's running away from the monster, then you're kind of like the liability energy in those two circumstances where you have a liability and an asset energy. Whereas if you shift into this perspective of the monster, then in essence you are the asset energy, because ultimately you're controlling the direction that's guiding the process and the direction that the direction is being going into. In essence. So once you shift into that mindset, more or less, of the money mindset, which is the asset mindset, that it is the way that money thinks. If you shift into the mindset of the way that money thinks, in essence, then you could become just like the money. Then you could become malleable like the money. You can flow in the direction of the money because you're thinking like the money, and you're flowing in the direction of the river that money is already flowing in, as opposed to flowing and going against that river, in essence, of the direction that money is going in, and you're going with it. Instead, you're going with it. So therefore, you're employing money, because you're employing money to develop its directions to be able to go into the rivers and the streams that you're developing, the processes for the different directions for that money, water energy, to be able to flow in different directions for, because you become that asset energy, and you become the controller of that money energy, basically, and you control the environment based on knowing the way that money wants to flow, based on taking the shape of that energy, based upon being able to know it's part of your environment, and understanding the aspects of your environment, to take the time to learn the aspects and the properties and the variables and the variations and the processes for which the personality of money reacts by, and how it functions and how it flows, and in essence the statistics which shape its personalities, more or less, to be able to study those things, to be able to try to become the monster, to be able to merge into the monster, to merge into the properties of the monster, because you studied the monster so well and the properties of the money monster so well that you can merge with the nature of money, in essence, money energy and money flow, especially with little things such as AI personalities, artificial intelligence personalities. You can make little brands, some little small brands, and you can direct the pipeline of different people's attention. You can pre-sell different items on like social media. You can make a handful of different Instagram accounts and continue to try to pre-sell different products. You can just make fake Instagram accounts to be able to have different landing pages, different landing websites for each individual Instagram page, for example, and pre-sell things, to be able to pipeline attention, to be able to have those rivers and directions of attention, where you're making different little brands and having different people and different eyeballs look in different directions, in essence, to be able to try to develop pre-sales in different directions, for example, as different streams, to be able to convert attention into dollars and cents, for example. But at the same time, as going back to the original example of becoming the monster, it is interesting and it is relevant and it is necessary to try to become the monster and become the nature of monetary energy flow, so that you can become a better investor, and in essence take on this role of more or less trying to attack the process of what money is trying to do, and be on the side of money and flow with money by understanding and trying to befriend money, like befriending the monster, basically, by learning from it, becoming a mentor to the monster, basically, to be able to just watch its flow, and then basically try to go for a swim, jump into the river, and then start to swim, and then also start to dig your own canals, basically, just like the monster is developing its own path to be able to run in the course of your dream, because you are the monster is you, and just like that, money is you are the money, and money is you, and monetary energy is something that you can control the flow of it to a certain extent, if you develop that subconscious pipeline, to be able to also conceptualize and connect with the energies that are within you, and the frequencies and the electricity that's within you, and also the frequency and the electricity of animals and the ecosystem as a whole. And the more that you give, especially in places like For example, Africa, if you can give to new populations and spread that water into new places and develop new growth and new pipelines and new farms for growth, especially in Africa where we can stop fighting and bring in new animals to be able to breed new farms, especially in places like Africa where we can try to hopefully collectively, worldwide, be able to try to stop fighting and be able to change that within our dream and trade monetary and materialism for philanthropy energy, trade all of our potential energy in this world as collective humans trading monetary energy with philanthropy energy and stopping issues, stopping conflict in Africa, stopping unnecessary conflict and drought in Africa, stopping unnecessary conflict and drought in Africa by collectively being able to add value to this place in the world, because our world is finite and we can flourish and develop growth and seed processes around the whole entire world to help it flourish and continue to get and span and spawn and grow and expand and distribute and multiply monetary energy. Thanks again, Dink Tech. Peace. Dink Tech Change for Games Studios. Dink Tech Change for Games. Bye, peace, bye.